When you were a child growing up, what rules did you have to live by? If you are a parent or a grandparent, what rules do you give your children or grandchildren? I invite us to consult the experts.
One of my rules in the house is to not jump on my bed or the couch.
Mine is to not running and don't put a paper bag on your head.
First one and top priority, keep my hands off my brother.
Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you.
When you go outside, watch for traffic.
Hold hands and stick together.
I wash my hands and brush my teeth and I pray.
Put the toilet seat down and flush.
I learned to pick up my messes and don't take the things that aren't mine.
Not to bring food like upstairs, so we'll make it like a mess.
Not to bring the iPod anywhere else but the family room.
Don't hurt anybody and try to be the best person you can be.
Yes, Jesus knew what Jesus was talking about. He said, "Of such is the kingdom." Rules are good. 4-year-old Zachary came running to his mother. She asked what the problem was, discovered that Zachary had dropped his toothbrush in the toilet. She takes him to the bathroom, fishes out the toothbrush, throws it away while saying, "Zachary, a rule we have is if your toothbrush falls in the toilet, throw it away immediately." Little Zachary thought about this, runs to his parents' bathroom, comes back with his mother's toothbrush. "Mommy, then you need to throw this away too, because it fell in the toilet last week." I repeat, rules can be good, especially if they are obeyed in a timely manner, right? Kids see rules very clearly. Right, wrong, black, white. The way it is. You heard them. The thing is, as we get older, we start seeing shades of gray, don't we? And gray is a color that children can never see. We start, after a while, thinking about precedents and statutes, and pretty soon we have books that look like this. I think it's very interesting that we have to build our society on laws, books that just go from one end of the library to the other, books like Federal Habeas Corpus Practice and Procedure, Volume 1. You know, there's more. Statutes and precedents. It's a way of adult life in our society. But is it a way of religious life? A group of people called the Pharisees thought so. As a matter of fact, in the scripture that you heard Stephanie read, the Pharisees are described as lawyers of religion, religious lawyers. And so once upon a time, the Pharisees come to Jesus and they say, "Master." Now, remember, they don't really mean it. They hate Jesus. And they're using master sort of in a snide sort of way. At the same time, they're trying to trap him. They're trying to show that they really want to know what his answer is going to be, to learn from him, but that's not the case at all. These religious folks who live only by the rules are saying, "Master, tell us what the greatest commandment in this book of laws," their Bible, what the greatest commandment is, because they wanted to trick him. They knew that whatever he said, they would find something to contradict it, because they were experts. So what they wanted was to humiliate Jesus at the least. Well, you should see in statute number 11.2c, page 317, and etc. They knew that they could humiliate him at the very least, or he might say something that could be considered blasphemy. And if that's the case, why? They have it made. They could arrest him. So, Master, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus, as only Jesus can, takes the book and closes it and says, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second commandment is as important as the first, that you love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these two commandments, all the rest of the ones that you find in this book are based. And the Pharisees grab the book and they try to pull it away from Jesus. Because you see, what they wanted to do, they didn't buy what he said. What they wanted to do was to take the book back and then wanted to do some research. They would find that the word love is found in 317 places in the 39 books of the Old Testament. They would have found that the word neighbor is found in 65 places in those books. So what they wanted to do was to categorize each verse, play one verse out against each other, go back to Jesus and start playing that game. Now, what do you mean? What do you think about this, Jesus? Jesus would have none of it. It's been said that whenever people started playing mind games with Jesus, he would say, enough! And he'd take a child, put the child in the midst of them, and say, be like a child. Be like a child. Because Jesus knew that a child is a window through which you can see the beating heart of God. The Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor is an Episcopal priest, quite a prolific writer, and she wrote of a time when her 1-year-old nephew, Will, was having a birthday party. He was the center of attention. He was having a great time doing a little happy dance when a jealous 7-year-old boy, Jason, goes over, pushes him. Will falls first on his bottom and then on his head. He cries more out of shock than pain because no one had ever treated him like that before. His mother, of course, goes over quickly and consoles him. And then Will does something amazing. With the wisdom of a 1-year-old, he gets up and toddles over to the mean little boy who'd pushed him, puts his arms around him, and lays his head upon the boy's chest. The room's quiet. The Reverend Taylor, reflecting upon it, wrote, what Will did to Jason put an end to the meanness in that room. That is what love is. Not a warm feeling between like-minded friends, but plain old imitation of Christ, who took all the meanness of the world and ran it through the filter of his own body, repaying evil with good, blame with pardon, death with life. What is love? Ask Will. Love is connecting to another person without pride, without pretense, without prejudice. Love is simply opening your arms, resting your head upon the chest of God, another friend, or even an enemy. Children know this. A child teaches you that life really isn't that complicated. A child knows and obeys certain non-negotiable rules. A child also tells you very quickly if you break one of those rules. When our children were a lot younger, they'd be in the back seat of the car when we'd be pulling out of the driveway, and if by the time we drive out of the driveway and hit the road, if one of us hadn't buckled up yet, you didn't buckle up in harmony. They sing almost as good as you, Beth. In harmony, they would sing, you didn't buckle up. That's what children love to do when they see a rule not being obeyed. You didn't share You use bad language. I wonder if a child were with you from sunup to sundown, if a child could somehow know what you thought, feel what you have felt, saw what you did, and heard what you said throughout the day, I wonder if at the end of the day, that child wouldn't say, "You didn't love like Jesus told you to love." What would make a child say that? Well, if you said you loved God with everything you had, did you start your day by talking to God? I mean, if you love someone, you talk to someone, right? Did you talk to God? Did you take any time at all this day to read a little bit from the book that He gave you? Throughout the day, did you try to deal with your fellow brothers and sisters justly or compassionately? Did you watch your words? Did you, as John Wesley told us to do as Methodists, did you try to stay in love with God today? Well, did you? Did you love God? Would the child say, "You didn't love like Jesus told you to love"? Did you love your neighbor unconditionally? Did you judge another person by the color of their skin instead of by the content of their character, as Dr. King once said? Did you judge someone by their sexual orientation instead of by the orientation of their heart? Did you judge someone by the size of their bank account instead of by the size of their soul? Did you give to someone who doesn't have as much as you? Did you pray for someone who abused you? Did you take time out to hang around a kid and to teach a child or to play with a child? Did you? You know, what's most difficult for me in being a Christian is not understanding what Jesus said. I mean, there are still some things that make me scratch my head, but by and large, I think I have a pretty good understanding of Jesus' mission and message. The difficulty I have with being a Christian, trying to lead a good life as Jesus would ask me to, is the fact that He asked me to deal with questions I'd rather not have to deal with. Questions like, do you love God with everything you have? Do you love your neighbor unconditionally? These are questions He forces me to ask myself. And you know what I do when I hear these questions? Even when I'm preaching this sermon to you, you know what I do? I go straight for the rule book and look for loopholes. I become a Pharisee. Well, yeah, I understand that, but it is difficult to take seriously those two commandments. The mark of a Christian is understanding that the Christian life is not supposed to be ice cream sundaes. It means dealing with some very tough entrees. But you know, maybe today especially, we have a way that we might be able to come to grips with it, maybe to live with more integrity in our Christian lives. Because maybe there is a third commandment. At the end of John's Gospel, Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Peter, do you love me?" Christian, do you love Jesus? Do you love the man who, on the night in which he was betrayed, before supper, said, "Greater love has no one than this, that he lays down his life for his friends"? Do you love the man who, during supper, gets the disciples' attention by taking a loaf of bread, blessing it, breaking it, and giving it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body broken for you"? Likewise, after supper, he took the cup, poured wine, gave it to his disciples, saying, "Drink from this, all of you, For this is the blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. And the very next day, on the cross, after having said, Father, forgive them, he holds out his arms as if to embrace us, but the nails hold him back. Jesus gave us two rules: love God, love your neighbor. But maybe there's a third one: love Jesus. I invite us to prepare to love Jesus right now. Let us prepare with joy to receive his gifts.